Discover the heartbeat of Lexington at the Marriott City Center, your premier downtown destination. Let us handle all your meeting needs, whether you're planning a corporate gathering or a special celebration. Our elegant, versatile spaces provide the perfect setting for every moment. Don't forget about our great room bar, a perfect spot to stop in after work or before a game to enjoy handcrafted signature cocktails. You don't need to be a hotel guest. Just relax and unwind. Whether you're gearing up for the game or winding down afterward, Lexington Marriott City Center, your ultimate destination to stay, connect, and celebrate. We've got everything you need to make every moment unforgettable. Under the lights in a place where tradition isn't just remembered, it's felt. It's homecoming in Lexington this Saturday. And into that hallowed ground located off of Sports Center Drive, a new challenge arrives. For the first time in history, the Texas Longhorns come to the Bluegrass, a blue blood program stepping onto a stage set for what some people call an ultimate trap game. Texas coming off a thorough victory against the Oklahoma Sooners in the Red River Shootout. However, the stories here are etched in silver and legend as well. It was Bear Bryant who walked the sidelines, who built a champion and left a standard that lives on in a trophy that symbolizes the pinnacle, a share of the 1950 national championship. Morgan, I've held that trophy. I've transported that legacy. It's not just a piece of metal. It's proof of what can happen when a strong coaching staff recruits the right men into a football program. There's no place tonight I'd rather be than getting locked in for this special homecoming edition with you and our listeners. How are you this evening, Morgan Newton?
Jeremy, I'm well. That's a heck of an intro. It's funny. I think back to those early days of being over there at the old Nutter in the weight room, and you would see some of those old placards on the walls from the 50s, 60s, 70s. For somebody coming in 2009, it really doesn't mean much to you when you're in the middle of it. When I heard you use it in the context of playing Texas, it really was a full circle moment. So I appreciate you setting the table that way.
Yeah, man, it's a tremendous opportunity for the Cats. Bear Bryant made Lexington a stop along the way, and he showed that success 75 years ago is possible in Lexington. Mm-hmm. Do you still feel that way, Morgan, or has too much time elapsed and other programs too far ahead with too much tradition to allow UK to tap back into what was the early making of Kentucky becoming a blue blood program?
Jeremy, you jumping right into it tonight, aren't you? Not messing around. I still have faith that Kentucky can be a really good program. I think that it's probably not going to come in the form of trying to out NIL people, specifically those that we compete with in the conference. I think you got to be competitive from an NIL perspective. But when you have the type of basketball program that Kentucky has that requires investment, you also got to think about the history of the football program and trying to identify what's going to be the identity of the football program. So I think it might look a little different than it does at some schools, but I absolutely have faith that Kentucky can be a premier program.
Kentucky with another bye week this year. What do you think the message was to the team? I know that Mark, he's let it be known that he's called some of his colleagues to get inside input on how to get better results coming off of a bye. What can we expect from this team?
I think most programs, especially in this conference, are looking for a bye week. Not Kentucky. Seems like bye weeks for us, we take a step back or we don't make the progress that a lot of programs do. There's a lot of statistics about certain coaches historically being really good off bye weeks, like Andy Reid. Unbelievable off bye weeks. Those bye weeks enable them to get their team healthy, but also set up the right scheme for the next opponent. I'm hopeful that the bye week was good to us and that we were able to put together a plan to help attack Sarkisian, Arch, and this bunch. But history says, at least recent history, that we're going to be a little sluggish coming out of the bye week.
On last week's episode, you said that it's impossible for a Kentucky fan to be apathetic. I agree. apathetic may not be the right word, but I will say that there is data that is suggestive that football content is not being consumed, that there's very little appetite right now in the Big Blue Nation for football content.
I don't buy it. And that's part of the reason what we talked about with the whole like apathy thing. In my opinion, apathy is a word that the media uses as a weapon to encourage change behavior, specifically from the UK athletic leadership. That's how I see it. People aren't apathetic. You've been around Kentucky fans long enough to know that they don't get apathetic. That's not a thing. Not here. That might be the case in some markets where there's professional sports, where there's beaches, mountains, or something that they can do for leisure. But Kentucky, there's no such thing as apathetic, even when it comes to the football side. Now, do I think there's going to be a lot for Kentucky fans to do this weekend with it being Keeneland? I'm going to be on a soccer field most of the day, and with homecoming festivities and all that. Are there going to be competing priorities? Sure. But I don't buy the whole apathy thing. I don't buy it.
I think the word that I want to use, I think that they're being very guarded. I think that when you're in a relationship that starts to take an unwanted turn and you're unsure about what could lie up ahead, it's very natural to want to protect yourself, protect your feelings, limit how vulnerable you're going to make yourself, especially if the fan believes that there could potentially be some gaslighting going on. And by gaslighting, I mean providing false hope, the messages that make them think that there is a pathway for success against Texas.
Oh, man.
Because the data is this, Morgan. When you look at our SEC play over the last 3 SEC games, offense, 23 points, 13 points, and 14 points in SEC play. Those numbers are not congruent with beating the Texas Longhorns or any conference foe for that matter. What has to happen for this football team to be able to go out and pull off an upset against Texas this weekend?
Mark and staff think they can win. They do. You've been around the program, around Coach Stoops. He's had times in the program's history where there's been more troughs than there have been peaks. But he's built a program that can stop the run and can run the ball. And although it hasn't always looked pretty at times, those types of programs can win games on a week-to-week basis. Now, are we going to win them every week? It's proven that that's not the case. It's about sticking to the formula, being a blue-collar unit, being selective when you allow Cutter to get the ball downfield. One of the promising spots of that game at Georgia, where he continued to drive the ball down the field to make plays. You've got a healthy bunch that is going to be ready to get after him up front and try to win the line of scrimmage. That's what it's going to take.
That's one of the big things coming off the bye week is that some guys that were banged up sounds like they're a little healthier, particularly DJ Waller. That was a name that Mark used this week to say that he has more bounce in his legs and looked like someone getting very close, Morgan, to being redeployed into the secondary. The secondary has been one of the more consistent areas. DJ Waller showing that he, in the past, has been a sure tackler. It'll be nice to get him back in the mix, big, long frame, but also his experience.
It's time for a few of these defensive guys to step up and really emerge as quality SEC players. Over the years, Jeremy, when our defenses weren't the best, we always had defenses that could produce at an NFL level, or at least they were on the trajectory to become that. A guy that's a former player that was part of the transition from Coach Phillips to Stoops just retired last week, Zadarius Smith. And he's a guy that was on a team that was really just transitioning to the Stoops era. It wasn't an elite defense by any stretch, but he was a guy that played here a short time at an elite level. Kentucky over the years has been able to have players, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, that emerge and become prospects. It's time for a few of those guys, Waller being one of them, to step up and really show what they can do. There's one thing we know. When Texas comes to town, there's going to be NFL scouts watching this tape. Scouts are going to be watching that one, much like they watched Georgia. And it's an opportunity for those defensive players to show that they can play on Sundays.
Yeah, I agree. You see a guy in Arch Manning who people were calling in the media as a preseason Heisman favorite. You saw him get better in a rivalry game last week. From a confidence perspective, that's something that he definitely wants to be able to build on. But you're right. There's going to be a ton of NFL scouts at this game. There's a lot to play for. It kind of reminds me a little bit. In 2007, we go on the road and we're playing at Arkansas. And Arkansas's backfield was loaded with Felix Jones and Peyton Hillis and Heisman frontrunner Darren McFadden. It's one of those games where there's enough athletes on the field where you know that there's going to be NFL scouts there. And I'll never forget something that Ventrell Jenkins said to me going into that week. And he said, this is one of those games where you got to strain even more. And you know me, my inquisitive nature, I said, why is that? He said, because this could be Darren McFadden's Heisman game. If we don't go out there and we don't play to the level that we need to play to, you will be forever enshrined in his Heisman tape. That comment gave me a little extra juice that week, just thinking on that. And I think that Texas has enough playmakers on both sides of the ball to where it is going to be one of those games, one of those tapes where it'll be used as a measuring stick for a lot of these players of whether they could potentially be NFL players.
Absolutely.
So when you look at some of the areas of success that we've had this year, particularly at that tight end position, some of those tight end linebacker matchups this week, those are going to be matchups that are watched with binoculars, with monocles, and bifocals.
That's right. That's right. That's where the game starts. When you play a Sarkisian team, you can expect that he's going to test you defensively. Arch may not be putting up the majestic numbers quite yet, but you know that Sark's going to have a quality scheme, a plan for how to attack this Brad White defense. I'm just hopeful it includes us being very multiple and that we don't make the picture clear and easy on Arch, specifically pre-snap, with young quarterbacks. There's ways you can get to them and really test their knowledge of pass pro, test their ability to dissect what they're doing defensively by pressing the receivers, showing some blitz, some great disguise. I hope that Brad White finds ways to challenge their offensive schemes.
For sure. Coming off of a big punt, Georgia took a shot last week against young corner and Tarian Nichols, a guy who in his second year just continues to show that he's getting better. He showed that he also has some elite recovery. It was a stutter and go, and he was able to recover and get back and make a play on the football. I really like his upside there, working underneath defensive back coach Chris Collins. I just think that this guy continues to get better. He's starting to look more and more like a Sunday guy to me, Morgan.
Coming into the year, needed to play a very integral role. He's not a guy that has elite measurables, 5'11", 190 pounds guy. But he is very effective in disrupting what offenses are trying to do to him. And you and I both know in this league, you're going to get tested every week. There's going to be an elite guy on that other side that's going to put it to you or try to put it to you specifically into the boundary. Sark is going to look and evaluate how teams have attacked us in the past and try to replicate that success.
In regards to the football program, there's one area right now that seems to be drawing a lot of fan interest, and it's the conversation surrounding the new entertainment district that they want to build close to the stadium. I was told in just a few short weeks that the university has received 20,000 messages. Do you think that a lot of them are more optimistic in nature?
I think it's going to be optimism and people excited about getting that done. If you can enhance the game day experience, if you can even enhance some of the game weekend experience, there's a lot of schools that have done these sort of things. I've always found it interesting that there's just not a lot that comes with the game day experience other than the tailgate that you make it. And I don't know if it's because I'm from a bigger city in Indianapolis, I spend time in Nashville, Cincinnati, and these are just bigger cities, but there's a lot of opportunities to fuel the local economy and take advantage of that. And it hasn't felt like UK has done that. In the Kentucky basketball game day experience, there's a big percentage of that group that drives in, parks their car, goes into the game, and leaves. If it creates more fan involvement, better game day experience, I'm all for it.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm all for it as well. I'm just curious to see how it does elevate that fan game day experience. The lights in the stadium, in my opinion, has been one of the most incredible additions to the fan experience. The only thing that could really help take that to another level is having a consistent DJ, finding that right mix of music to keep the fans energized, keep the players energized, because of the lights and the music going hand in hand. That's a tough combo.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. I can tell you it was a complaint of ours. Just trying to get the right music to get us going. I don't know if they were playing Monet or whatever, but it felt like we were.
Why did that come to my mind too?
But it felt like you were getting ready for a railbird more than you felt like you were getting ready to play a football game. And so they've done a lot of things to enhance the experience. I think the Kentucky football environment was a very conservative environment. You know, they try to really be careful about protecting the family atmosphere. There were times where it was just flat out cheesy. You and I've both been there where certain songs come on and it just ignites the crowd in the fan base. Always got to be looking for ways to make that a dynamic experience. It's a difference maker. It's not only a difference maker for those that attend the game as fans, but it's a difference maker for the recruits that come into the game.
In theater, sometimes you can sense when something major is getting ready to happen in a plot line, because the conflict in the story and two people on stage, the conflict, it gets to a level that is so tense that something has to happen to one of the characters. And I feel like we're getting to that point now. When you look at the film, I see guys that are playing hard. I don't see guys that are quitting. I'm not seeing loafing. I'm looking for it, because if I do see it, I will point it out. It still is very frustrating to see how that game started out last week defensively for Brad White's defense. Corey Peters talked on last week's episode about how important it is for the defense to be married with the offense. Offensively, we're not getting much there. The defense almost has to pitch shutouts. They have to hold teams to less than 14 points, which is almost impossible in today's SEC with how skilled some of these offensive units are. So last week against Georgia, we're giving up chunk plays in the run game and the pass game. And that's something that we have not seen historically with Brad's defense. And I just don't know how you can overcome that. We're seeing teams go on long, sustained drives, which is hard to do in college. And if you're not turning the ball over, if you're not getting tips and stripping and getting fumbles, it's just hard for a defensive unit to be able to withstand these long drives against such skilled and talented offensive units. We gave up 54 rushing yards in that first drive by Georgia. You want to talk about setting the tone as a tempo that they were going to come out and they were going to run the ball on those soft edges. And that's exactly what they did. I just don't know at this stage, and Mark was asked about that, I don't know how you can overcome this. It just seems like schematically that it's a mismatch and that it's just not working. At the end of the day, the data points that matter, most important data is points, and second most important data point is explosives. And if you're not generating explosives, then this offense can't score. Yeah. And on the two drives where they did get touchdowns, they had explosives, and they were able to get the ball down the field, the first being the big 38-yarder, the little swing play to Law where he takes it for 38 yards, and they're able to move down the field and eventually hit Caddis, and then later in the game they hit Law. I don't know where to even start to try to put together a pathway for success for this team to win SEC football games.
Yeah. In this particular game against Georgia, the turnovers were even, which is a great thing. Time of possession was pretty rough. They possessed the ball 7 more minutes. But I think the key for this one is, to your point, their yards per play were just significantly better and significantly higher. I mean, they were averaging a first down about every time they threw the ball. It's hard to win when you're giving up 10 yards a pass. I think the rushing numbers are a little skewed. We gave up 4.5 yards a rush. I'd be interested to see what those yards per rush were when the game was somewhat in balance, when it's competitive. They were 9 of 12 on third down. We were 3 of 12. So we were 1 out of every 4 times. So, like, to your point about the stats that matter, if you're going to play this type of game, you got to play from ahead. You got to possess the ball. You got to control the ball. We were down 14-0 before everybody got in their comfy seats. They got to start faster.
The biggest bright spot offensively for Kentucky was the continued improvement of Cutter Boley. 225 yards on the road at Georgia, 2 touchdowns. The best performance of a Kentucky quarterback on the road since Dusty Bonner at Georgia a little over 20 years ago. What your thoughts are on his development game over game? Last year, he had some success against Texas. Does that factor in from a confidence level going into this week?
Yeah, of course it does. He didn't really start that game, but he got in and did some good things. I think that was the first flash of what the future Cutter Boley could be. I thought in this game, he made some improvements from South Carolina. When you're the quarterback, you're always going to be evaluated by the overall success of the offense. I think it was much more clear to watch this game and see that he was in better command. He had made some good plays, 25 completions, 2 touchdown passes on the road. That's a huge step forward for him. You can win with 25 completions in this league. You want to see it be a little more efficient rather than it being 60-something% passing. You'd like to see it get up north of 75%. But you've got to marry what he's doing in the passing game with what we were doing with Seth McGowan and that bunch running it. Got to get the running game back going again.
We talked a few weeks ago about why haven't we seen any freshmen really emerge. Cam Miller, if that's what he's capable of, he climbed the ladder a little bit and got one of those deep outs that Cutter threw that was very eye-opening. It looked like it was very elite execution from quarterback and wide receiver catching the ball.
Cutter's going to look to give guys some opportunities. He's an equal opportunity quarterback. He's going to continue to look for players that can help him and support him. He's got a great relationship with Hardley, got a great relationship with the tight ends. He's spoken very highly of Macklin in the past. Looking for Kendrick Law, looking for guys that are going to create those explosives and make some plays down the field. Coming off a bye week, they're going to get an immense amount of opportunities and work. I'm hoping that Cam Miller was able to get some reps over these last few weeks.
Talk to me about what it's like as a quarterback to throw checkdowns. When you throw a check down, does it give you a sense of peace, or is there a little frustration that something else didn't develop?
I think it's a combination of all the above when it comes to checkdowns. As a quarterback, you got to be selective on when it's time to take what you can, take some profits, sure, and then try to also get the ball down the field. You want to see a guy like Cutter who has the capability, has the arm. You want to see him sustain drives as well. Sustaining drives means getting to a back, getting to a tight end, getting to a slot receiver in the check down. I think those types of things are important. If you go a step deeper, Jeremy, as you get into some of these SEC, some of these defensive coordinators, specifically in 3rd and long, are going to do things that force you into checking it down to get you off the field. In those types of scenarios, you're going to want to see a quarterback understand what his pass protections are and be able to get his 5, 6, 7-man pass protections at times set up in such a way that allows him to push the ball down the field. And that can come one of 2 ways. It can come from the quarterback protecting himself and establishing a pocket where he can get the line, slide in the right direction, point to the right hots, and understand where the linebackers are coming from or safeties are coming from. It can also come from the offensive coordinator setting up max protection or scenarios where he has hots that he knows to get to. Bush is going to be looking at doing all of those things because he's got to protect his young quarterback in this league.
Bush and coordinators talk about the importance of parity in play calling. Oh, it's great. 50% pass, 50% run. Maybe this is above our pay grade because we're not coordinators in the SEC. But at this stage, as a person who just wants to see the best for our program, as a fan, as an alumnus, I'm at a point now where, Morgan, I don't care about parity. Just move the ball down the field. However you can get it down the field. If you finish a game and you've tried to pass it 75% of the time and you ran it 25%, is having parity one of the concepts that needs to happen to be beneficial for the entire staff, including our defensive coordinators? Or is it important from just a play calling perspective to be 50-50?
I think you want to be some degree of balanced. There are ways that you can run the ball without handing the ball off. Sometimes quick passes do the same job of, an off tackle run, a zone run, a pin and pull scheme run, a counter run. Sometimes being able to get that ball and throw it out there really quick does the same job of the outside zone. Just have to block less people. Sometimes handing off a jet sweep to a guy like Law does the same job as throwing a bubble screen to a guy like Law, right? So I think it's the type of run or pass that is more crucial than the fact that they're running or passing itself. How about this one, which in high school football, I try to get offensive coordinator put it all the time. If you have a jet motion sweep and you give them one of those quick little shovels, well, that's considered a pass, but really it's a run, but it helps prop up the passing yards. I don't necessarily feel like you have to be 50-50 on the nose run pass, but you've got to do some things offensively that are going to make them defend you for 4 quarters, specifically in the run game, by allowing Seth, Dowdell, and some of those guys to get downhill and punish early in the game and let Texas know that you're here and you're going to be here for 4 quarters. That's crucial. In order to do it consistently, they've also got to have some threats down the field from Cutter, tight ends, receivers, and company to run into some lighter boxes if possible. You don't want them to be able to load that box with 8 guys.
That makes sense. So in a perfect world, if the offense and the defense are married, in my head, the way that I assess things, then that means that the special teams have to be the in-laws. They got to be the glue people. So in today's game where you got punters that are just kicking the laces off of Wilson and hanging it up in the air on the kickoffs and on the punts, if they're taking that phase of football away from you, how important is it for special teams to find some ways to affect and impact the game? We've talked about Jay Bull. We're one of the best field goal kicking units in college football over the last 2 years, thanks to our guy Alex Rayner, who really set that standard and put it in a whole new level. I mean, I think we're hitting field goals at like a 93, 94% clip over the last 2 seasons, which is just incredible. So when I talk about the in-laws, when in-laws come over, hey, you need to get this kid. You might have to make a meal. You got to help out around here. You got to do your part. I don't see us going after punts. I don't see us finding opportunities to extend drives with fakes. Is this part of Mark's system, or is this Jay Bull deciding that it's not even worth taking these opportunities? And the reason why I ask that is because I know the special teams coach that Jay, the last NFL team that he was on in Pittsburgh. And I know that guy just like a Steve Ortmeyer, a guy that we loved in Lexington. He always knew where he could get a fake. The timing was always right. He knew where he could potentially get a block because that's what these guys did. That's what they studied, Morgan. That was their craft. And I'm wondering if the system is preventing us from having opportunities on special teams to try to flip some of these games in the way that we've Shane Beamer do it and his father do it at Virginia Tech.
Jeremy, I mean, it's a great point. If you're giving up 9 yards of pass, 5 yards of rush, you really should be trying to steal a possession, try to steal some of those hidden yards. You cannot have an average special teams unit at a school like Kentucky and I think you're going to win competitive games. That's got to be an asset for you. And that was one of the things you and I both were indoctrinated by Coach Brooks and that very veteran staff that we had, is understanding where you could take a sack, where you needed to throw the ball away, understanding heels on the 10, don't back up on a punt. It was important that everybody on the team understood the situations and knew exactly what we were trying to accomplish in that regard. That's where elite coaches really showed their value. Urban Meyer, for example, Jeremy, thinking back, he would put his most loyal soldiers on special teams to try to create an advantage or to try to make game-changing plays. Percy Harvin, Zeke Elliott, he would put on special teams to make plays that impacted the game.
I've had this conversation with Mark 2 times over 12 years. I've spaced the questions out by about 5 years, so maybe he wouldn't remember the last time I asked it. You see Iowa do it. Iowa puts their All-Americans on special teams. Jack Campbell, All-American linebacker, making plays out there on special teams.
Yep.
Mark does not want to put his starters out there on special teams. If there was ever a year to say, hey, we need to have our best and our brightest out here on special teams to help, whether it's a kickoff return, punt return, a block, you just got to do it. I get it. These young players, you want to get them some reps. But when you got the opportunity to get a Josh Allen matched up on a guy that's not used to seeing a guy like that, you expect Josh to be able to win one of these matchups and be able to lay out and get one.
It's a great point. I'm a little bit like you, where you might be able to create some matchups, create some advantage opportunities on special teams that you can't create down to down.
Some other areas where I've seen some growth in Cutter: expressing emotion out on the football field, being comfortable, getting worked up. I think we all saw the clip where he wanted to get on the ball and get a snap off. In my opinion, when you start to see a player that has as much responsibility as the quarterback able to express emotion in such a critical moment of the game, it's a sign potentially that things are starting to slow down for him, where he's processing the bigger picture.
I've been in that situation. I have to just take you back to the practice fields here a little bit. Every day in practice, the coaches are barking at the quarterback, run the play, get set, get them lined up, make sure they're lined up, so on and so forth. It's every other word because you want to try to create this tempo.
Yeah.
And so the one guy that got to be on the same page as you is an offensive center. They've got to be able to manage that tempo, that beat of the orchestra, because sense the frustration from Cutter, because he's sitting there thinking, hey, we got to go fast. But you also don't want to speak too greasy to your offensive line or your center. You know, you got to kind of find a balance. They're the ones keeping these big avatars off of you, but you're trying to prod them. You're trying to say, hey, get down, get set, let's go. We got to get the play call. He just had a moment where all of the mounting let's goes and get sets showed up in a game situation when they were trying to go fast. And I felt I got his frustration in my core.
Yeah.
That's just a dynamic that you really know if you're a quarterback, an offensive center, and probably like an offensive coordinator. I can tell you Coach Sanders' philosophy was replay was going to stop the play anyway, so you might as well try to get a good play rather than try to rush and just get a play off. I was excited to see Cutter get frustrated because you can tell he really cared. It was important to him.
Yes.
But he and Jagger have a relationship. They know each other for a long time. That was something that happened in the moment. I'm probably good 5 seconds after.
What's that thing that the jockeys have in their hands sometimes? They use it and the horse runs faster. It makes me wonder if there's an opportunity for Cutter to get one of those built into his glove to where it looks like he's kind of putting his hand on the guy, encouraging him. But whatever it is he's doing, he's speeding them up a little bit.
Well, I had George Gonzalez my first year. And at that particular point in time, I was just trying to figure out which way was up. And those guys, they were really trying to make me comfortable. And I'm so thankful for George, Christian, and Zip Duncan, Stuart Hines, Matt Smith, and then all those guys. Quarterback's going to be responsible for the tempo of the offense, but the quarterback's got to wait on the center to get the offensive line set. So it's a catch-22.
You and I both know that now this is beyond just amateur athletics. It's semi-pro, whatever we want to call it. And I remember a conversation that I had with a close friend that played in the NFL for a while, and I remember asking him, I see you're averaging about 30, 35 snaps a game. What's it going to take to get you to get more than that, 50, 55, 60 snaps? His response to me was, Jarmon, they don't pay me to play 50 snaps a game. They pay me to play 25 to 32 snaps a game. And that was the first time that I realized that just because you're being paid to do a task, such as being a football player, doesn't mean that you are responsible for playing 100% of the snaps. That conversation made me think here recently about QB1 Cutter Boley, who entered this season as the backup quarterback, and I'm sure that he has a package in place that was sufficient for the second string quarterback. And now that he has shown that he is a viable QB1, we believe that he is the face, the present, and the future of the football program. After seeing his most recent performance in Athens, 2 touchdowns, 225 yards, first quarterback to do that in 20 years on the road at Georgia, there's no doubt in my mind that Cutter Boley is QB1. He is the number one priority, in my opinion, for Kentucky football, making sure that he is protected, making sure that he is taken care of, making sure that he is well compensated, because he has the ability, Morgan, bring this program back to being a contender. We have the best young quarterback in the SEC, and we have to protect that. Am I crazy to think this way? Do you think that it's important at this stage of the season that if they haven't already, look to lock in Cutter long term?
Yeah, let's do an exercise. In your opinion, Jeremy, in this day and age, in 2025, how different is the NFL from the SEC?
There's more consistency across the board at all three levels. You could make an argument that it's harder than what they're asking an NFL quarterback to do. They're asking a college SEC quarterback to not only lead the program on the field, but also off the field. And they're also asking him to go to class and to be a full-time student, and also find time to engage in some community service aspects, but also some NIL fundraising activities, engage with some corporate partners, do some photo shoots. They're asking starting SEC quarterbacks to do more than what's being asked of starting NFL quarterbacks. I don't think that's an exaggeration at all.
So the reason I pose that question that way, franchise tag for an NFL quarterback is like $40 million. The transition tag, I think, is like $34, $35 million. The average salary for NFL coaches is like $6 million. I think there's an argument to be made on what's more difficult, what's easier, all these different things. The market is still settling in the college space. I use that kind of comparison because college football is headed more to a professional model. It is paramount for all parties. If Cutter is truly a part of Kentucky's future, that they support him as such. You could tell he was the future last year against Texas. If you were really watching, they potentially made a big mistake by bringing in Calzada, probably for more money this offseason. Cutter's playing now, and we're halfway through the year. That could have blown up and could have lost Cutter. Now you got to make the decision, how are you going to show Cutter that he's a part of your plan moving forward? And it's different, Jeremy, than Kentucky's had to treat a quarterback in the past. The university hasn't had to treat a quarterback that way in quite some time. Maybe to some extent Will Levis, maybe to Tim Couch, but he's going to be a part of...
This is a different deal.
This is a completely different time and completely different situation. And so I think it is crucial that Cutter is treated like the college version of a franchise quarterback.
The winds are starting to blow in different directions at the university. And if I had to take a guess, outside looking in, just trying to channel intuition in the way that our ancestors would, there's a differing of opinions of how to utilize the influx of monies coming in from SEC TV contract deals, extensions of multimedia rights deals. Some people saying that this is the university's money. This isn't the athletic department's money. And we have to be good stewards of these type of resources. I just wish that I could be a fly on the wall with some of the conversations that are being had behind the scenes right now when you have a program that's in the position that Kentucky football is right now, and you have an opportunity here with a young quarterback in Cutter Boley where you're getting ready to make a decision to make this individual the highest paid athlete on campus. Why? He represents a program in the most valuable football conference in this country. And this one individual gives you the opportunity week in and week out to do something that you can make an argument that there's only 5 to 10 people in the country that give you that type of ability, which is to go and compete at the highest level every single week. There's a war that's happening right now. There has to be. I can sense it. People trying to wrap their minds around how to do this and how to do it at the highest level. And we know that there's concerns about the state of the program and the people that are leading it and how to right that ship. It's a perfect storm in so many ways, Morgan, that I'm sure that there are a lot of conversations that are being had. Some of these decisions are going to be made at the highest levels of the university.
If I was to go and sit down with some of the university brass, 15 years ago, they would have said that those monies that were produced by the football program and the TV contracts were already allocated.
New science building, new math building.
All right. Some would probably refer to Title IX. Got to be prepared to uphold our obligations of Title IX. Who deserves to make more money? Is it Otega Owe? Is it Cutter Boley? Is it a tenured liberal arts professor?
Or a head coach that isn't responsible for making offensive play calls?
Or any play calls, offense or defense or special teams. Doesn't call any. I don't know, man. I think all of those are real questions. And I think what we will find, because the college football landscape is significantly more like a free market economy now than it's ever been, I think there will be a balance over the coming years.
That's scary for the brass to be in a situation where it's a true free market.
It is scary, but it's also revealing. It'll be revealing of where has the resources been going over the course of X number of years, really tens of years. Where have these resources been going? How are you going to run your programs? What investments and how they're funded. It's going to change the game on everything. And the schools that can get ahead of it are, they're going to, they're going to be able to celebrate their spoils, right?
I had the opportunity to ask a president of an SEC university, how important or impactful is it to have a competitive football program and a competitive basketball program? I specifically mentioned the run that Florida had between 2005 to 2009. Football and basketball both enjoyed a national championship during that time period. And I referenced record enrollments, record out-of-state applications, and to my knowledge, was the first SEC university to allow students to be full-time in 3 different semesters. You could be a full-time student and only take spring and summer and be off in the fall. I was basically met with a non-response to that question. I got a political answer. It directly correlates. Now, some people may say there's some lurking variables. You don't want to shortchange. Some of these programs are nationally ranked programs. They're going to get applications, but we can safely say that on-field and on-court performance directly impacts student enrollment, but also student experience.
I think it's clear. There's a huge movement towards the college-age boys and girls attending SEC programs and enjoying that SEC environment. You can't walk on the University of Kentucky campus anymore and not pass tons of kids from Cleveland, Columbus, Detroit, Chicago that are coming down to enjoy an SEC experience. It's been rumored that they've spent $20 million on this basketball team for this year. And that's an investment that many programs don't choose to make. It's a balance of deciding how to allocate your resources, whether they are from the university or your closest donors and boosters.
Randall Cobb said on our recent episode with him, those games directly impacted you guys and your path and your decisions to choose the University of Kentucky and build on what was happening in Lexington. And it made me really think about when the University of Kentucky was on probation. Our class in 2005 was the first full class coming out of that probation period. Guys like Wesley, who during my recruiting process looked me in my eyes and said, hey, man, we're trying to build something special here. Don't come here if you're not trying to work. You know what kind of people you get when that's your message on recruiting visits? That's how you find your psychopaths. That's how you find your people that love football. That was Wesley's message to a lot of us, the young guys. You got to be all in. Guys like him, people like Andre Woodson, Keenan Burton, Jason Leisure, Wesley Woodyard, Eric Scott, Marcus McClendon, guys that got pulled around to different rooms, offensive line, defensive line, different special teams units, doing the grunt work to help stabilize the program and find parity in some of these rooms. And they did it without complaint. These guys had come in and started the process of laying that foundation. Andre and Keenan, they were the guys that just elevated and made our class feel safe coming in, kind of like a firefighter getting up on the roof of a burning building or EMS paramedics showing up on the scene to stabilize a patient, not knowing what else is going on in the immediate environment. So when you look at that time period that Brooks was in Lexington before he passed the baton, or Joker took the baton from Brooks, depending on what perspective you're looking at it from, Andre Woodson, as he leaves, could see Andre in Mike Hartline. I could see shades of Derek Locke and Alfonso Smith after Raphael Little graduated. It's very reminiscent of Old Testament. This person begot this person. Basically, like the first 20 pages of Genesis is a lot of legacy building. So when you look at Stoops, when he really started to get this thing churning, that legacy that John Schlarman laid, Steve Klinkscale, John Sumrall, so many good coaches and good players that literally set the foundation for the Kentucky football program. And you saw shades of them in the next guy that took over. Chris Rodriguez looking very similar to Benny Snell, but yet still having his own running style. It was beautiful football, Morgan. And now we're at a point where we got a football team with 55 new players on it, many of which have never even stepped foot in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky was a flyover state for many of these guys. You only saw it on the map when you were in the air flying from East Coast to West Coast. It's getting hard for me to see the culture. I truly feel like the culture has been stripped away in this new NIL model, and that we're chasing our tails a little bit, trying to stabilize the program. I don't think it's fair to put all of this at the feet of Mark Stoops and say that it's the football coach's job to create this stability. I think it's the university and the greater community's job to say, we care about the football program. We're going to put not only resources into the program, but we're going to pull some of our brightest people over on the academic side, as well as the administrative side, as well as the healthcare side, with the athletic side, to create an opportunity and a model that takes into account the things that the alumni of these sports say could potentially set the program up for success. Send some surveys out the way that you're sending out surveys on the entertainment side. Send them to your football alumnus. Ask, what do you think it will take to create stability in the football program? What are you willing to do as an alumnus to help bolster the football program? I think that this is where we're at, and it's going to take some transformational leadership to create a model for Mark Stoops or any future coach of the University of Kentucky to have success in the SEC moving forward.
Jeremy, you make a great point. I just think back to coming on my visits and sitting in the quarterback meeting room, and it would be Andre, Mike Hartline, Will Fiddler, Tyler Sargent, Randall at certain points. These were guys that were in the meeting room when I came to Kentucky as a recruit. There was great continuity amongst the players. There was great continuity amongst the staff, whether it be the coaches or grad assistants. It's a different space. I just remember sitting trying to replicate that as a freshman and watching Mike run practice and lead practice, the ways that he handled exchanges, some of the ways that he managed to handle his drops and things of that nature. You lose some of that. You're turning over 50 players a year. That it's an important part of Kentucky's culture. It's very difficult to sustain that when you are changing players like we do. And it's one of the reasons why I think you have spoken a lot about Kentucky's got a yin while some others have yanged, and how they manage their program and how they build their identity. What's the foundation of the identity? Especially in a time where you're just not going to be able to out NIL a lot of the teams. For what we do on the north side of campus from a basketball perspective is very important to the fabric of this university. That particular program and series of programs are always going to demand big money to be a leader and an innovator and decide what success looks like on the football side. And it's going to have to come from doing something that's different than how others approach, much like what Vandy has tried to do, how they've tried to really mold and fix their identity. Because we just don't have enough billionaires in the state to spend the kind of money it's going to require to keep up with some of those teams.
I don't think we can buy our way into heaven at Kentucky. I think that there's so many other things that you have to factor in. I remember a conversation that I had with Mark Stoops where I asked Mark to build onto his Stoops troops, and I had an idea for him. I think that when you're trying to change a culture, and which he was doing a really good job of, you have to be innovative. You have to think outside of the box. And I tried to get him to think about the babies. There's a lot of people that care about this program, and I know Mark, he's one of those people. I worry now if everything at this stage is reactionary versus where you were able to build on to recruiting classes. It starts with what you're doing on Friday nights, high school football. We have to see Kentucky high school football continue to get better and continue to evolve.
That was one of the reasons why Brom and company went after the big dog. It is clear that they wanted to double down and invest in the in-state recruiting. I coach at LCA. We've seen the big dog in LCA as much as we've seen anybody. So she's out in the streets doing what the big dog does. And that is get around to these schools and recruit players and try to win the home turf. Jeremy, I think that's part of the decision that Kentucky's got to make is what role are they going to play in high school recruiting? Is it going to become a culture built on transfers or something in between? Are you going to be Dabo or Deion Sanders? Kentucky's got to find a formula that fits. My opinion is they need to take a page out of the Rich Brooks recipe book and try to go find those types of players that maybe are just a little undersized. Maybe they're just a touch short. Maybe their hands are 11 inches big. I still firmly believe that you can be a development program while the others are in an arms race. But you got to go get the right type of guys and the right types of players from the right types of backgrounds. One of the things you and I talked about when we were coming in, there were several guys on the team in those Brooks days that were military children or kids that came from Campbell, came from Knox, came from some of those places. Now, Campbell and Knox aren't what they used to be, but that was part of the recipe, bro, bringing in those types of kids.
I had tremendous respect for Rich, and I know he did for me based on some of the conversations that we had over the years. When you get guys into your program that have been parented by the kind of people in the kind of home that you're accustomed to or that fits kind of your model, whether that's military parents, then it's pretty easy for Rich to know, hey, both of this guy's parents were military veterans. He shouldn't have any problem falling in line here in Lexington. I think we got to charter a plane and find these guys and get back to what works for Kentucky. Like Corey said on last week's episode, he said Aaron Donald was small. All the measurables. He was small. He said, but put him in the weight room with anybody. He was stronger, more explosive than all those guys.
That's right.
Those guys exist. They're out there. What I appreciate, he respectfully objected to the model of everybody's got to be 6'5" in these measurements, and then we can turn them into this. Guys need time to grow and develop underneath the right men, the right strength coaches. There has to be a balance where you take guys that are no-brainers, but also a model willing to take chances on guys who may not fit parameters when it comes to measurables, but they check these other boxes. The production in high school, the parents, other background things that the NFL does such a good job at looking into before they make the decisions of making these young guys highly paid athletes. And that's where we have to see our program evolve, is fact-checking, digging into the past and the background to try to make these well-informed decisions.
The same way that some of these NFL programs go to some of the same college programs to find players. The Philadelphia Eagles goes and grabs a host of players from Georgia. That's a way of going about doing it at the high school level as well. We had a few different pipelines when we were in school. I'm not saying you got to take all your players from LaGrange, but I'm saying you know how they're coached, you know how they're raised from a program perspective. Those types of things matter, and I think they've got to matter in the future of Kentucky football. We were getting a lot of players from Detroit. We get a lot of players from Ohio, a couple guys from Youngstown. We've got a lot of offensive linemen from Kentucky. That was kind of an important piece. I'm just willing to bet that we're probably going to have a new coach in relatively short order. I'm guessing that that's where we're headed. They're going to have to find somebody that has got a plan, and that plan just can't be to drain our boosters.
What do you think Texas is going to try to come into Lexington and get accomplished on the offensive side of the ball Saturday?
Yeah, I think they're going to try to establish tempo. I think they're going to try to control the game. They've seen some of the success that opponents have had against Kentucky in terms of converting at a high clip on third down. I believe that Sark, is really going to try to get up early on us and make Kentucky play similarly to how they did against Georgia from behind. I think that's going to be a part of Texas's formula, try to take any crowd that Kentucky has out of the game. What do you think, Jeremy?
They're going to try to build on what Georgia did last week. Georgia very successful at running the football last week off those edges. If you're able to establish the run game the way that Georgia did, then we know that the play action, it makes it so much easier for a quarterback to really get into a rhythm and a flow when you got an effective run game going. If we can't take away and limit the run, it's going to be a long day for us.
Yeah, it's got to be a major part of the formula. And giving Cutter some opportunities to create some explosives in the offense.
If you tell me that we only had 2 or 3 explosives against Texas, then I know that we did not score over 20 points. Unless those happen to go for touchdowns. When I look at the data from an offensive perspective in our 3 SEC games, the third down conversion rate, 3 for 13, 5 for 13, 3 for 12. Those numbers are not congruent with offensive success in this league. And then when you couple in the explosives, when you talk about how limited these have been for us throughout the season, 13 explosives in the passing game, 20 yards or greater, 7 of those came against Eastern Michigan. They have to continue to find ways to be explosive in both phases of the game. Have not been very explosive in the run game in SEC play. Only a handful of those there, Morgan. So there are tremendous opportunities here for us to continue to build on what worked against Georgia, which is some of the setups that Bush had to the tight end, being able to catch Caddis there, motioning from outside into the slot position and being able to streak down the field. These are explosives by design versus the explosives by blocking, like the little swing pass to Law that went for 38 yards. We've really seen Law really start to find ways to be effective in this offense. But for so much of this, It's going to come from our tight ends, our other wide receivers out there in space. They have to be able to block. That is the key for us to be able to do some of these things that you referred to earlier when you talk about pass plays that resemble runs because they're quick hitting and the clock continues to move as well. These short passes that are behind the line of scrimmage or within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage that are pitch and catch, keep the clock moving. And who cares if the parity's not there this week against Texas? Who cares if it's 65-35 pass to run if you're making up for some of that by completing some of these quick hitting plays? And I saw Cutter start to get into a rhythm. I thought he threw the slant balls very well against Georgia, getting his feet set. He was accurate. And I just want to see him continue to build on some of those things, Morgan. But most important thing is try to find a way to be effective on first down.
Yep.
Bush, he's trying to find those first down plays to get some positive yards on the board. And it's just been so inconsistent for this group for so many reasons.
Yeah, they struggle on first down. They struggle on most downs, unfortunately. That's the reality of the situation. One of the challenges this group has is it's hard to move the ball consistently without some elite offensive talent. I think there's some signs of some players that can do some things that are elite, but they've got to identify ways to get them open and get them the ball. I agree with you. Law has been better as the season has progressed, and they've got to continue to expand upon that.
This is going to be a big one from a pass pro perspective. When I did my scouting on Shiaz Pete, the New Mexico State transfer and our starting left tackle, this was one of the games that I spent considerable amount of time looking at him, looking at his pass rush, looking at his recovery. And this was a game that, from a footwork perspective, we saw him struggle a bit in. These outside linebackers that Texas has, they're really good. Some of these guys are a year older, and they're familiar with him as well. And they're going to want to pick up where they left off last year, which is trying to keep him off balance, speed, the power, pass rush moves, those types of things. This unit has to be really good this week because these linebackers, particularly number 0, they're heel. They're fast. They're going to be running the delayed blitzes, which they're very effective at. Some of them are by design. Some of them are green dog blitzes, meaning you see the back stay in and they're coming and they're trying to eat up that running back and win a one-on-one. So we're going to see a lot of twists and stunts as well as some of the delayed rushes. And our center and our guards, they have to show improvement from some of the struggles that we saw in SEC play with some of the twists, particularly in the South Carolina game where we did struggle.
Jeremy, I'm going to be honest. I think Shiaz Pete has struggled quite a bit this year so far, specifically as we got into the SEC schedule. Because we expected him to be somebody that could anchor that offense and maybe control the bookend. It's a tough job to play tackle in this league. It's been quite the transition for him. One of the things you learn is when you get transfers, sometimes it's for a reason. Sometimes you get them because the things just weren't working out where they came from. I think it's a different scenario this time because I don't think there's as many of the character issues that we've had in the past from an offensive line standpoint. And I think you got to sometimes find ways to help guys like Shiaz out by keeping tight ends in at times or by bumping those defensive ends with running backs and fullbacks and things of that nature. But I think overall the offensive line has been better.
From a statistical perspective, if you're not eliminating possessions by taking the ball away via forced turnovers and or creating havoc plays on special teams where you're affecting punts, either by blocking or causing a punter to shank one, these are the kind of things that Kentucky has to have this week to even have a chance for victory. Morgan, just looking at the sheer data of not having long sustained drives, not scoring in SEC play unless it's coming off of multiple explosives on that particular drive. If we're not turning the ball over, creating short fields for our offense, it's hard for me to envision Kentucky finding a way to win this. Now, with that being said, it's homecoming. There's a lot of ghosts of past that are going to be in Lexington this weekend. I'm sure that there's a lot of unanswered prayers that the football gods have an opportunity to grant. Some of these prayers that have been floating around unanswered for quite some time, probably for about the last 70 years or so since Kentucky's first matchup in 1951 against the University of Texas. This Texas offense scoring 28 points a game. Morgan, we haven't scored 28 points in an SEC football game, and it's hard for me to remember. I need to call Corey Price to get that data because it's not in my notes. It's hard for me to envision a path for us to score enough that advantageous Brad White defense that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years be one of the top scoring defenses in college football. We just haven't seen that from this group this year.
Yeah, it's been a tough year so far. And I think in an environment, a night game at home in Kroger Field, you could find a little magic.
As I get older, I need to be able to see it, touch it, taste it, hear it, smell it, all the senses. And I think that that's where our fan base is. They need to see the product on the field. They need to see it run around with their helmets on fire. I've still yet to see someone get in front of that mic and say, I'm going to stop the bleeding. Like how a surgeon does in a trauma room when someone comes in with some sort of a wound that has to be repaired in order to sustain life. I've yet to see any of these guys get in front of the mic and say that we've had enough and I'm willing to do more. It's just not there. Not yet.
Yeah, you got to leave room for somebody to emerge. One of those leaders to emerge.
I left it.
It could happen. There's still time left. There's a leader that could emerge. I'd love to see it on the defensive side of the ball. Somebody emerge as they can become the Caleb Downs of the Kentucky football defense, or that alpha.
Like the guys that just make the plays and leave you wondering, how did he do that?
How do you do it? How do you get it done?
That's all the time we have today for this special homecoming edition as the Wildcats prepare to take on the Texas Longhorns. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.